It was interesting because I just finished this documentary about Mike Tyson, and the first time I met Mike, Brian had brought him over to the set of The Pickup Artist, and Mike had just come from Jim Brown's house, where he'd met Jim, and Jim had told him about the wild stuff going on at the house, and Mike, who was wide-eyed at 18, said, "Jim Brown told me about all that crazy stuff going on, and you were there. I want to know about all that." And he said, "There were like orgies," and I said, "Yeah," and he said, "And you were the only white guy in those things." I said, "Yeah." He said, "I want to hear about that stuff." So now, you know, 30 years later, I do a documentary about Mike, and it was, I felt, coming full circle from that night in the Museum of Natural History, where we were having that conversation.
Well, you know, it's, one of the things I remember you telling me about that story about Jim Brown coming up with the line is, you know, he says that line, and you're like, "Oh, that's a great line, I'm going to remember that line." So you're writing fingers, and you add it in there, and you put it in there.
Yeah.
And the first time you give Jim Brown the script to read, and he gets to that line, and he's like, "You know, that shit's true." Like, I know it's true, you said it, motherfucker.
That's why it's worth transcribing the best lines of Friends, because even they may not remember it later on.
But no, how much was like Harvey Keitel's just, you know, incredibly, you know, tightly wound performance? How much was that on the page? How much was that Harvey at the time? How much was that collaboration between you two together?
Oddly enough, from a dialogue point of view, almost every word of Harvey's language was delivered as written. It was all kind of planned out. We only had, you know, I think about 15 days to shoot, so I really kind of got it organized very tightly in advance. But his behavior startled me. I had no idea he was going to take the role in as dark a direction as he did. I was very much aware of the humor in the movie, intending to be, and it comes through. But I thought the other aspect of the movie wouldn't be as radical a departure from it. I loved it when it was, but I was kind of startled to see it. And day after day, I just let him go with it in his direction because it was working so well. And about 2 weeks after shooting ended, we ran into each other in front of the zoo in Central Park. And he said, "Boy," he said, "I'm just coming out of it." He said, "I don't know how you can take it." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Living in this pall of darkness and gloom that you must be in all the time." I said, "What kind of feeling?" And he said, "Well, just to create that character and that darkness, you must be in that all the time." I said, "I didn't intend it to be nearly as far as it took."
Well, you know, one of the things that I love about his performance, and I love about the whole juggling of his character in the film is, you know, on one hand, he's too intense and hyper and fidgety to even, like, you know, be anything but a social misfit. At the other times, again, but the whole thing about his duality of his nature, you know, like in the scenes with Zach Norman, it's like, you know, he's got a vaudeville kind of almost pattern.
Yeah.
You know, he hops back and forth between his social miscreant and then actually being quite social and quite charming.
And that's what the notion for that character started with an assumption that that's the guy that would have come out of the fuck that created him. In other words, if he had that mother, an austere, highly strung, soon-to-be snapping, quasi-psychotic musician, with a hard-nosed, rough, humorous, dark, twisted, wild gangster, what happens when those two people mate? What kind of son is born out of that union? And that duality is what was constantly on my mind, is letting the character grow. By the way, it reminds me of something Jim said once, Jim Brown said, which is, well, he said it about women, but I'm sure it's equally true of guys. He said, you can never understand a girl until you meet both of her parents. And he said, no matter how much time you spend with her, no matter how much time you think you know, spend one day with their parents and you'll get a completely different view. And I think always, I'm thinking even if the parents aren't on screen, who were the parents.
Yeah, yeah.
Even if they were missing. And, you know, I was thinking today, because I was looking at the Tyson film this morning, at the beginning of the movie, he says, he talks about his mother, and then he says, and it was my father. I think it was my father. I mean, they said it was my father. And you realize one of the elements informing him was not just the absence of his father, but the confusion as to who his father was.
Right, and the whole family history that's a mystery to him.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's like one of the things. I mean, but it's, you know, it's also interesting from, you know, seeing this film. I was about like 15, I think, or yeah, about 15, I think, when I saw it, and I responded to it. And actually, it was back when in Los Angeles we had On TV. All right, and they showed it a lot on, so I watched it a bunch of times.
Yeah.
And but you know, the thing about it is, you know, back then I didn't quite understand stuff like the complete duality of his nature. I didn't get that, all right? But I look at it now, and that's what the whole movie's about. I mean, I'm thinking one of the things is, it's like, you know, you either go one way or the other. You can't straddle both worlds, you know. And so if he had gone more the piano way, he couldn't have helped his dad. He would be a chicken shit when shit hits the fan.
Right.
All right. With even Lenny Montana or somebody like that, he wouldn't be able to stand up to that guy. He could talk to shit.
Right.
But when the push came to shove, he's got a life that he can't get killed for or get fucked up. All right. So, you know, that life or death situation is the audition scene.
Right.
He doesn't have the backup that it needs to deal with that kind of pressure when it's live or die.
Exactly, exactly. And
but he has that kind of pressure to kill that motherfucker.
Right. You know, this, to me, the whole key, really, and turning point of the movie is that audition scene, because all along it's a kind of dream and unrealistic fantasy. And he says most concert pianists are starting by the time they're 10, perform by the time they're 10. So he's already a huge underdog, but he was hanging on to the hope. And the whole movie shifts completely at that moment, because then that side of him is buried. He's not going to have another chance. And then the nail in the coffin is his mother. And we really, up to that point, just have a vague sense of her, not that she's anything close to the wretched shape she's actually in.
Right, yeah.
And then she buries him too with that gesture, which one of the great excuse moments that wasn't really an excuse. Marion Seldy's a great stage actress. I promised her one great scene. It was about a 7-page scene, and we rehearsed it, and then we got to the set, and we started rehearsing it some more. And I said, we really don't need this, and we really don't need that, and we really don't need that. And her part finally became half a page of dialogue. I said, I swear to you, it's not that you're not doing it well, it's just that we really don't need it. And when she got that gesture of sort of wiping him away with the back of her hand and guarding herself against it, I said, we honestly can just end the scene there, we don't need any more. And she said, well, I'll trust you. She said, but I've never had so much of a part shredded so quickly.